Hello and welcome everyone. So this webinar is on variable data, a VersaWorks time saver. So the outline of today's webinar is to go through what is variable data, why use it, where can it be beneficial, and how do you use it? So we're going to go through each of those sections. So the first question, what is variable data? So variable data allows you to create designs which can then be filled with images or text afterwards. So this means that you can quickly and easily personalize or customize your designs with just a couple of clicks within VersaWorks. You can also use a spreadsheet as well. So you can have up to 20 elements within your design that can be personalized or customized. And then you can attach a spreadsheet to this to fill it with information. So that means then you can quickly and easily generate a lot of copies of your design with different names, images, etc. So a few examples of where you could use this would be something like this sticker here. So this is a baby shower sticker. It might be the sort of thing you guys produce. If not, maybe imagine something that's a little bit more similar to what you do. And here you can see I've got a name here box up at the top. And then I've got the rest of my design. So the name here part is the part that I would customize with my variable data function in VersaWorks. This is loosely what the design would look like. And then afterwards, once the variable data parts have been filled, it would start to look a little bit like this. So you can see we've got David's baby shower and we've got Peter's baby shower down below. So we've got one design, which then generates lots of personalized artwork on the other side of that. So then other examples of this. So this is a gas safe sticker. So if any of you have had your boilers serviced recently, ahead of the winter months, you might have seen one of these. These are really quite popular. I know for a lot of the guys that attend courses with me. So here we've got a design that's got 3 different variable data elements. So we've got a part which will receive an image. So that can be for a logo at the top of the design. We've then got the address for the organization. And we've then got the opportunity to add a telephone number below that as well. The other elements of the design are then all fixed. So then when I move on and show you what this looks like, you can see here we've got 2 different personalized designs. So 2 different logos, 2 different addresses, and 2 different telephone numbers down at the bottom. So where that could save you time potentially is if you tend to do a lot of this type of work, rather than generating one-off designs for every customer that comes to you, as long as you have their logo, their address and telephone number, you can then quickly and easily create these for them. Okay. So why would you use variable data? So personalization is a massively growing market. So I think we probably all remember the personalized Coke bottles that came out a couple of years or so ago. I think those were probably some of the first examples of kind of mass commercial personalization. And it was just a simple sticker that was personalized or customized, the sort of thing that you could do with variable data. Moving on from that, now we've got customers that are using bits of UV kit. There might be some of you on the webinar today, or eco-solvent printers. And with the UV kit, you might be doing things like personalizing booklets or notepads. So you can see here there's a book of nursery rhymes, and then it's been personalized with a name down at the bottom. That's the sort of thing that you could use variable data for. Finally, there's things like artwork that you'll see over here. So with VersaWorks variable data function, you can use any of the fonts that are on your machine. So if you've installed additional fonts, you can also have access to those. So here's a design, it's for a quote, and you could quite easily have perhaps a front end on your website where customers can pick and choose what they want their quote to say. You can then have that fill into your artwork, and then you can generate multiples of those, each of them completely personalized and customized. Just a quick note on here, you'll see it down at the bottom as well. All of the images we've used are just for illustrative purposes. We don't own any rights to any of those. So that's a little bit about why you might use variable data. Then the final part is how do you use it? So we're going to go into a bit more detail on this, but just from a top line perspective, the first thing you need to do is use either Adobe Illustrator or CorelDRAW or any other vector-based drawing platform. So if you use things like SignLab, Affinity, so on and so forth, so long as you can create yourself a spot color, and that's the important part, and you can name it, then you can use VersaWorks variable data function. We're going to see a little bit later on the importance of the VDP underscore part that you see on the screen here, and I'm going to go into both Illustrator and CorelDRAW and show you how to set up your spot color in both of those. The only thing you need then in conjunction with that is just VersaWorks. VersaWorks is the part where the magic happens. That's where you can introduce your images and your text that marry up with your design. You may also need Excel in some instances as well, if you wish to do kind of large lists of information, but those are the primary bits and pieces that you need. So what I'm going to do now is just exit this presentation. I'm going to jump into Illustrator firstly, then we're going to go into CorelDRAW, and I'll show you the same thing in terms of setting up your spot color for use with variable data. So let's just jump through there. Okay. So what you can see here is that I've got Illustrator open, I've got my artboard in the center. We're not going to create anything particularly fancy in this example. This is more just to demonstrate the principle of how to go about naming your spot color and then ultimately saving that out for use in VersaWorks. So the first part to do is to use our rectangle tool over on the left-hand side here to create ourselves a shape. This is where our variable data information is going to go into. So this can be any shape that you desire and it can be any size. The other thing to add is that you can adjust the shape of the box afterwards in VersaWorks. So if you've created it and it's slightly too small, you can make that a little bit bigger on the other side. So at the moment we've got a yellow box with a black fill around the outside. I'm just going to remove the yellow from the center. Then what you'll see is we've got the swatches panel open on the right hand side over here. So at the moment we've got lots and lots of different swatches open. These are mainly CMYK based ones because that's the format of the document that we're in at the moment. What we want to do is click on one of these swatches. It doesn't matter which color it is, and then down at the bottom down here there's this button which says new swatch. So new swatch essentially will allow us to take the swatch color that we've got there and then name it and tweak it. So at the moment it's got a name and it says it's a process color. What we need to do to make this variable data ready is transform this to be in VDP underscore whatever we then want to pop into that box. So the VDP underscore part needs to be fixed, but what you choose to call that is entirely up to you. So in this instance we'll call it VDP underscore name. I'm then going to change this drop down here to be a spot color. If we want to tweak the color itself, we can just move around these sliders a little bit here and we can pick any color that we desire. Whichever one is easiest to see and amongst your design is generally what I would recommend. And once we're happy with that color, we can then click OK. So the color that was up here is now a spot color, and we can see that because it's got this little dot in the lower right hand corner. And when I hover over it, it says it's called VDP underscore name. So we know we've got that named correctly now. If I then just swap this so it's the stroke around the outside and just remove my fill, this is now a box in my design that's ready to receive information. So you can put whatever you like behind here, and you can have up to 20 of these boxes within your design. So that's how to do that in Illustrator. And what I'm going to do is just save this out. So when we move on to the VersaWorks part in a little while, you can see for yourselves what this will look like in VersaWorks. So I'm just going to do File, Save As. It's important to then save this out as a PDF or EPS file so we can keep that spot color information that we've just created. So I'm going to Adobe PDF, variable data. Ooh. So I'm just typing around a microphone here. So variable data webinar, and I'm just going to save that onto my desktop here. Oh, apologies. It's not wanted to accept that. Let's just try that again. Data webinar. Okay. Save it as a PDF. Okay. Great. So that's now saved. Please ignore the reverse capitals there. Okay, so now I'm just going to jump over to Corel and show you the same principle as well, just so you've seen it in both platforms dependent on what you guys use. I'm just going to quickly check the chat box on the right hand side as well and just see if there's any comments thus far. I trust that you can all hear me okay. So in Corel, it's the same principle, but we're just going to set this up in a slightly different place. So we've got our artboard in the center of the screen here. I'm then going to click to select a rectangle, and then I'm just going to draw that out here across my artboard. What I then need to do is create myself a new spot color. So the way to do that in Corel is on the right hand side here, you've got your swatches. You can click this little arrow here and go to Palette, New. We can then call this whatever we like. Because we're doing variable data, we'll call it variable data. I'm just going to turn off that caps lock a second. So variable data, custom palette, and we're going to save that in here. And then what we get is a fresh palette on the right hand side. So over here now we've only got one color showing in there, and that's just no fill at the moment. If we want to add some colors into here, if I click the eyedropper firstly and then just click down here, it will generate a color based on the color sample that it's just seen down here. So it's just the same color as the gray toolbar. Then when I double click on this, we get a similar window to what we had in Illustrator, where we can then look at customizing what that color is and how it behaves. So the first thing we're going to do in here is just name it accordingly. So we're going to call this one VDP underscore, and we'll just put name in there as well for convenience, so it's the same. If we wish to edit the color in Coral, it's slightly different. So you just click the edit color button up here, and then we can move along here and we can pick any color that we like. So if we want to make it this red color, we can pick that one out. When I've changed the color there, it's just removed my name. So I'm just going to pop that back in, and I want it to be treated as a spot color. So in the same way that we change from being a process to a spot in Illustrator, we're doing the same thing in Coral as well. So I'm just going to click OK there. Then we can see that we've got our spot color over here. This one's called VDP underscore name, so we know that's been named correctly. In Coral now, we can just right hand click to take that on as our stroke around the outside, and left hand click on the no fill, so we've got nothing in there. And now we've got a box ready to receive variable data information. In the same way as with your cut lines, it's best to make these hairline size. So hairline in Coral and 0.25 in Illustrator. So now I'm going to do the same thing, just save this one out as variable data Coral. I'm going to save this one as a PDF, and then we can have a look at how these would appear in VersaWorks afterwards. Okay, let's just save that onto our desktop here. Great. Okay, let's just close that one off. I'm just going to close Illustrator as well. Okay, so now we're going to jump over into VersaWorks. If you've got an older version of VersaWorks, it might look a little bit different to this, but you should still have the variable data function in the same place. It's just that some of the icons and some of the color schemes, etc., might look a little bit different. This is the latest version of VersaWorks 6. So the first thing I'm going to do is just look at bringing my two designs into VersaWorks. I'm going to add them into the queue up here. And so I'm going to do my variable data dash webinar, bring that one in here. Okay, that one's just loaded and come in. And now I'm just going to have a quick look for my Coral one as well. I can see it here on my recent files. So you can also with VersaWorks, if you guys didn't know this already, you can drag and drop your files in from the File Explorer as well. So I'm just going to drag that one across into here. Now what we should see when the files come in is that under our special items here in the center, we've got this little 1 and 2 logo. That shows that our designs have successfully got a variable data element inside them. So the spot color has worked, and that's showing now in VersaWorks. So both of these files have got the little 1, 2. So that means that that's within there. If I open up the first one, when we first go into VersaWorks here, I'm just going to make this larger so you guys can see it. I'm going to make it 2000%. You can see that there's nothing really within the design. There's nothing that's showing. So the box that we've created, the outline of that doesn't appear itself when we bring it into VersaWorks. When we go down to the variable data tab, we then have the options to click enable variable data printing and show all variable data fields. And that's then when our box will appear. So here's where I said if we wanted to adjust the size of our box, we can do that. So I can make it bigger or smaller. If you start to adjust it and realize actually you wanted it as it was originally, you can just click reset and bring it back to its original size as well. And then in this tab here is where we can start to populate this box with information. So we're going to start off with this one just as a simple example, and then I've got a few other bits of artwork to show you as well with slightly more complex examples. And I'll show you also how to link in images as well. So if we're going to populate this with different names, let's just pop a few in our names list here. So I've just clicked the plus button at the top. I'm then going to put my name in there. Let's pop David in there, and then let's pop Tom in the next one down. Okay, so as we start to populate these, if I swap back now to my layout tab, I'm just going to make these a bit smaller. I made them huge, so let's go 500%. Okay, and then when we zoom in here, we've now got Ollie, David, and Tom. So at the moment, these are really simple, basic designs, but you start to get an idea of how variable data works. So let's just click back down here to variable data. If I want to start changing some of my fonts, and the observant guys amongst you will probably have spotted this, I've got this attributes window over here. So if I select all of the names that I've got in here already, this selects everything in this column. What you can do is select each item individually. But there's benefits and drawbacks to this. If you want there to be a different font on each item, then you can do that. But if you want to change all of them so the fonts are the same, just select the column over here. So then we've got type at the top up here, and we've got either text or image. In order to link up with an image, we'd need to create a spreadsheet, which we're going to come on to in a little while, but we want to fill this with text. We then have options for our fonts. So we've got all of the fonts that are installed on our computer. So if you want to install fresh fonts, if you want to install nice calligraphy fonts and all of that sort of stuff, and that's what you use to personalize your items, you can add those in. Once they're installed, they'll appear in your list in VersaWorks. So they're all in here. We'll just pick one out at random. We then have the ability to size our font, and there's this really handy auto sizing function as well. So that just means if you've got names that are different sizes, etc., it will just ensure that the font will be as big as it can be within the constraints of the box that you've got. You can change the alignment. So at the moment we're on center, but if we wanted to shift that to the top, to the bottom, to the left, to the right, so on and so forth, we can do all of that and change the justification. If for whatever reason you need to flip this upside down as well, you can do that, or change its orientation. You can also mirror. You can change opacity. You've got all of your standard font effects down here as well, so things like italics, bold, underline, so on and so forth. And finally, down at the bottom down here, you can change the color as well. So if I click this color box, we have either CMYK or RGB color spaces. There's also a transparent option in here as well. So CMYK is probably the most popular one that you'll be using. And in here, if you've created a design that's got particular CMYK colors around it and you want to match that text up with the rest of the design, you can just input the values in here as CMYK values, and then you'll achieve the same color. So when you come to do your prints, your personalized part won't look like it stands out from the rest of the design. So we're happy with the black. You can also pop a stroke around the outside as well, should you wish to do that. In this instance, we're not going to. And then again, if I switch over to my layout tab, we can see that all of these have changed. So the fonts for each of those have all been tweaked accordingly. So that's just a quick example of how you can use variable data. What we're going to do now is open up some of the designs that I showed you earlier in the presentation and just have a look at these as well. So I'm just going to close that one off. So the first one we'll have a look at here is the boiler sticker. So I'm going to double click this one. And this is one where the design has already been set up. So here you can see the outcome of what we're gonna get to. You have to excuse the slight pixelization. Excuse me, put my teeth back in. You'll have to excuse the slight pixelization, and that's just coming from the fact that with VersaWorks, it's generating a preview of the file, so the actual output won't look quite like this. So that's what we're going to be aiming for on the other side. So I'm just going to open up a version that's not been set up just yet. And this is the same version of the design that I showed you earlier. So when I come down to the variable data tab at the bottom here, at the moment there's nothing showing. If I click enable variable data printing and show all variable data fields, I'm just going to move this one to one side, then all of a sudden here we can see 3 different boxes that can now be filled with information. So this top one here, which I can click and select, is designed for use with our logo or an image, and that's what we're going to hook up that with. We've got our address down here, which is for text, and then we've got our telephone part down at the bottom down here as well. Okay, so I've already got a few designs to go in this logo box here, and I'm just going to talk you through how we then get the file address to make that work. So there's a load function up here, which is where we're going to load our spreadsheet in from. So I'm going to load in a spreadsheet that I made earlier firstly. So let's just go into boiler sticker and gas sticker VDP. Okay. So in here you can see that we've got our telephone number. Our address is just a typed out version of each of our addresses. And then with our logo, we've got our full file extension for where the files are. So this is their location with the full root file at the start. So what I'm going to do now is just open up Excel to show you what that document looks like in Excel as well. So let's just desktop and gas sticker VDP. The important part when you're using a spreadsheet is just to ensure that your documents are either in XML or CSV format. It's really easy to save it out in Excel format, but VersaWorks can't quite work with that. It can only work with the other two that I mentioned there. So here we can see along the top, we've got our column names, and these are named exactly the same as the names of the spot colors that we've created. So in this particular file, the names of the spot colors are VDP_logo, VDP_address, and VDP_telephone. So they're along the top up here. The information that we then want to populate these parts with are listed below. So this bit here where we've got the C:\users, training room, so on and so forth. Where we've got this from is from the files itself that we want to go into VersaWorks. So I mentioned earlier, I've got 3 logos that have been designed. These are all from FreePick, by the way. I can't take any credit for these. And we've got logo 1, logo 2, and logo 3 here. To find the full file address for these, if we just right click it, click onto properties, go into security, and then in here, we can see that we've got that full file address with the .jpeg part at the end. So this is the bit where I've copied that for logo 1, logo 2, and logo 3. And that's how I've got the information into the spreadsheet. Because all of that's in there and it's all in the right place. Oh, let's just not save that one. Because that's all in its right place, that's then how when we open up the spreadsheet in VersaWorks, the information is able to automatically populate into our lists here. Again, the same principle applies. So if we want to start doing things like changing our font, we can do all of that. In this instance, we'll keep it as sans serif, but we might make this a little bit bigger and just click the auto sizing button just to make the most of the space that we've got available. We'll do the same with the address as well, make that a little bit bigger and just auto size that. And then for our logos with the images, so you've got either text, and when we're on text, it just shows the address for where the file is. When I swap that over for image, we can then see that it pulls the images through. You've got a few different options in terms of how they fit. So either you can do none, which means that your artwork needs to be at the right size for the box that it's going into, or you can have fit to fields, or you can do fit proportionally, which means that it retains its size. So fit to fields would mean that if you've got a square design and you put that into a rectangle, then it would stretch it out effectively. Whereas fit proportionally means that it will always keep the same perspective on your design. Again, you've got your similar options. So you've got your alignments here. So you've got left, top, bottom, and so on and so forth. Lots of other variations as well. You can choose to flip your images, etc. You can also change background colors as well. So if you wanted to add a background color onto there, so let's make this one black. You can see in the space around the outside of the logo there, the gap between the box that we've popped the logo into and the design itself has now turned black. We don't want that, so we're just going to change it back to transparent and click OK. And then this is where we get back to the point that I showed you at the start, which is where we've got our 3 different designs that have got 3 different logos on and 3 different addresses. So it's a really quick and easy way to customize those labels. These ones have got cut lines pre-programmed in as well. So it would just be a print and cut job. And then you could just easily fill up your spreadsheet each time. So whenever you've got a new batch of customers, you could quickly and easily get them set up. So that's the gas stickers. The other ones that we've got here, so let's have a look at the baby shower stickers. So let's just double click that one and open it up. Okay, so at the moment you can see in here where the variable data part would be, there's nothing showing. So same principle, we go down to the variable data tab, click enable variable data printing and show all variable data fields. Can then see that our variable data field appears just down here. And then we can start to fill that using the plus button here. So we can do Dave, oh, put a little apostrophe S on there, Dave's, okay, Ollie's, Tony's, okay. So in this instance, we've used the font within Illustrator, which we also have within our list here in our attributes. So if I click on font, and I've just got to remind myself what the name of that one is. So this one's Fort or Forte. So I'm just going to move up, click onto that one there. Okay, make that a little bit bigger. And I'm just going to auto size it. So it's the same size as everything else. This is the part again where you can see here that where we've got Tony's, it's a little bit smaller than the other parts of the design. If we wanted to try and match that up and adjust it a little bit, if I make the size a little bit bigger, then it should adjust that for everything that we've got highlighted in our column over here. So then it looks a little bit more like it was designed in at the start and doesn't stand out from the rest of the design. In terms of the color in this instance as well, I use the CMYK color in Illustrator. So the cyan value is 91% for this one. The yellow is 3%, and then the black is 0%. So when I click OK, that would then be the same color as the rest of the design. So it will look like it was just there from the start. So then when I go up to the layout tab, you'll see in here that we've got our 3 copies. There's something a little bit strange going on with the colors in here. When you come to print them, it would look as it did in the variable data tab. But for some reason, the preview just looks slightly off between the 2 windows. I'm not entirely sure why that is in this example. So that's then how you could quickly and easily customize those and personalize them. The final example I've got is for heat transfer. So quite a common job for a lot of the guys that come on our courses, and a lot of you hopefully that are on the webinar today, is heat transfer. So with heat transfer, you can still use a variable data element. So here we've got a design that's got our cut line around the outside. And when I go down to the variable data part, I click enable variable data printing, show all fields. We can see the part down here that can be customized. Now we're going to start to pop some names in here. So let's go Cindy. Let's have a look who's on our webinar here. So we've got Toby. Let's pop you in. Okay, and we'll pop Sandy in there as well. Okay, cool. So we've got our 3 names. I'm then going to make these bigger to fill the box. So again, I'm just going to do font size 70 and just tick in the auto sizing option. And then when I go up to my layout tab at the top, I've got my 3 different designs. So we've got a logo and a name below. So these would be great for things like PE kits, levers, tops, all of that sort of stuff. If you had a class of say 30 individuals, if you had to design those in Illustrator or Coral, it can be quite a pain. You've got to do a lot of moving around. Whereas here you can take that information and just insert it directly into the design. Then you could get these printing, weeded, and heat applied afterwards. So really that's everything in terms of the webinar, and just showing off some of the different features of variable data. So working with text, images, etc. How to set up variable data in both Coral and Illustrator as well. And hopefully a few practical applications that show you where you could potentially use that in your own work.